Ho ho hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Becky and this is BecxReadz, and welcome back to another Fave 5 episode of Bookmas. Today I am sharing with you my 5 favorite fantasy books of the year. My 5th favorite fantasy of the year is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This is the first book in her Sand Sea trilogy. This is an adult fantasy inspired by the tales of 1001 Nights. It is set in the desert. It is about a young woman named Luli, I believe her name is. Yes. She is essentially a thief. She goes around and she steals things to give to other people. And she does this with the help of her djinn bodyguard, who sort of watches out for her, as a bodyguard does. And one day she gets summoned by the king to go on this mission to find a magical lamp. Her choices are go find this magical lamp or be sentenced to death. So she and her djinn bodyguard set out to find this magical lamp. And they get an unexpected helper in the form of the king's son. He is a prince who has always longed for adventure, but nobody really sees him as useful in any way. So he sort of sneaks out and joins Luli and her bodyguard to try and track down this magical lamp. And it just leads them on this adventure through the desert. They run into some mysterious gangs, and her bodyguard is actually harboring a secret that we don't learn until the end of this book. So this book actually started out kind of slow for me. I was liking it, but I wasn't loving it. It wasn't until the end of this where we find out what the bodyguard's secret is that I was like, oh my god, I need to know what happens next. I was actually afraid that this was going to turn into a love triangle because we do have this young woman with 2 men. And that, I was waiting for that to happen, and it never did, which I was so thankful for. I was like, thank God. There's actually no romance in this book at all, which I was expecting there to be, and there just wasn't. Great platonic friendships. I don't know if maybe a romance will develop in the coming books or not, but I really liked that this had just a platonic friendship between this trio. I liked the adventures. I loved the desert setting. I don't read a lot of books that are set in the desert, but I really enjoyed this one, and I cannot wait to read the next book in the series. And hopefully I can buddy read it with Kristen at Kristen Craves Books, since we buddy read this one together. My 4th favorite fantasy of the year was Legends and Lattes. This is a cozy fantasy. This is about an orc named Viv who ends up in this little town, and she wants to open up a coffee shop. So that is the whole plot of this book pretty much, is she just wants to open up a coffee shop. So throughout this whole series, we see her finding people to work in this coffee shop. We see her like tasting the coffee and setting it up and finding this found family in this little community. I'm not somebody who even drinks coffee. I like coffee flavored things, but I can't stand the taste of coffee. My first job was working at a coffee shop, and I tried all the different coffees, and I just can't do it. So the fact that I enjoyed what was going on in this story, I just found it so warm and so charming, and seeing all these creatures who had never tasted coffee be like, oh, this is like the nectar of the gods and whatnot. There's this little baker. Oh my god, he is so cute. He is probably my favorite character in this story, is the little baker who makes the little croissants and stuff like that. I want to eat these little croissants. They're so good. I also thought the relationship between Viv and I can't remember her love interest's name, but it was very sweet. It didn't take up all of the story. So I definitely think this is one that is deserving of the hype. It didn't get 5 stars. It only got 4 stars from me, but I can definitely see why people love it. And if you are somebody who just loves the cozy atmospheres of books, definitely check this one out. My 3rd favorite fantasy of the year was a historical inspired fantasy, and that is The Bright and Breaking Sea by Chloe Neal. So this is a story of a female ship captain named This is the story of a female ship captain named Kit. She grew up in an orphanage, and she worked her way up in the ranks to become the captain of her own ship, and she has an affinity with the sea. So she's grown quite popular amongst the captains because her ship, though small, is quite fast and can weather any storm. And she is sent on this mission to try and track down this spy for the kingdom in this very dangerous pirate island. But she has to do it with this commander who she's never worked with before, and she has no idea who the hell he is. So it's sort of got this hate to like feeling to it. There's really no romance in this book, despite the fact that I really wanted there to be. Like, you can feel that there might be some romantic tension between Kit and this captain, but they never really act on it. Because if you don't know, I love seafaring adventures, and this had it galore. I loved the pirates and the sirens, and I loved the tension between Kit and the captain. I loved the found family aspect, and I loved the, like, magical elements in the story. Though light, I really enjoyed them. My fourth favorite fantasy of the year is actually a pretty short one, and that is Orphea. This is what I would say is an adult modern day fairy tale. This is about a mother who has lost her daughter. Her daughter supposedly died, and so she's dealing with a lot of grief. She uses running as a coping mechanism to handle that grief, and one day she is out running the streets of London at night, and she spots her daughter through this glowing crack in the sidewalk, and her daughter's just laying in a field of flowers. So she tries to get to her, and in doing so, she stumbles into like this alternate reality, or this other world London. And when she's there, she ends up running into these people who tell her to get her daughter back, she has to track down the Halloween King. So she goes on this journey through what is essentially the underworld to try and track down her daughter. And along the way, she is losing memories of her daughter. So she's trying to keep hold of any memory she can, because she knows by the time that she reaches her daughter, chances are she's not going to remember who she is enough to save her. So she sort of writes things down, and she keeps repeating things to herself so that by the time she does approach this Halloween King, she can save her daughter. This is a very short story. It's got illustrations throughout it, and I just really enjoyed this whole story. I loved the sort of afterlife element of it. I loved the journey that she went on. I loved the moral aspect of what are you willing to give up for the people that you love. I love the sort of dark romance kind of that's in here. Although the male main character in this is called the Halloween King, this has really nothing to do with Halloween, so don't let that throw you. My favorite fantasy of the year was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. So this is an adult gothic fantasy about this young woman named Elspeth Spindle, who was born with this disease, I guess. There's this disease spreading around her country where people get infected and it can turn them mad. So when this happens and people start showing symptoms of having this power that will eventually lead them to being mad, they are pretty much executed. So when her family figures out that she has sort of this ability, they hide her away, and so she is allowed to grow up and flourish in this world. But she does so with this entity in her head who acts sort of as her protector. It's just this dangerous, like, mist creature that comes out when she gets aggravated or somebody threatens her. It becomes like this embodiment in her, and it will take care of her and protect her. She has this ability to locate the cards that are part of the magic system within this world. These cards allow people to have certain abilities. And in this kingdom, these people are trying to collect all these cards, because if they can collect all these cards, then they can get rid of like this darkness that is in this kingdom. And Elspeth, being able to locate these cards, she ends up working with this group of people to try and make that happen. And in doing so, she ends up sort of in a bit of a romance. I really loved this for the gothic nature of it. I thought the magic system was really interesting because these cards are pretty much like tarot cards and how those work. Did it make sense all of the time? No, but I loved it anyway. This book had just enough romance to keep me interested in the story. It's not romance heavy. I would say one chili pepper worth of smut is in this book. But I loved the romantic tension between the characters and their relationship growth as it went. It felt very natural in its progression. I loved the found family aspect in here that she develops with this group of people. And I loved her name, quite honestly, Elspeth Spindle. If you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen that I did like a cosplay of Elspeth Spindle recently, and I I loved it. I was trying to channel her so much. But this is definitely one that I see myself rereading in the future, and I really need to get to the second book. I haven't read it yet, and I really need to do that before I forget what happened in this. But this is one that is definitely worth the hype. It's very well written. It's very easy to read. And if you love gothic fantasy with a little bit of romance in it and a cool magic system, you should definitely read those. Those were my 5 favorite fantasies of the year. Let me know down in the comments what is your favorite fantasy if you read it. But if you don't want to comment any of that but would like to let me know that you made it to the end of this video, could you leave me a sword emoji? Because that seems like fantasy-esque. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for another Fave 5 episode of Bookmas. I swear I'm getting closer to the end of these, folks. Bye.